Good afternoon, church. As you know, I've been using this Ashes to Fire devotional material to kind of walk through the Lent season and even beyond that, all the way up to Pentecost, thus Ashes to Fire, Ash Wednesday to Pentecost. I really like this material. I hope you're enjoying the daily devotions that I'm putting out on Facebook. I'll try to do that, continue to do that, and be consistent with that. But tomorrow's devotion is the text pulls from John 11. Of course, you know the story. It's Lazarus. It's Jesus' interaction with Mary and Martha in the loss of their brother. And I'm going to read a portion of that. I'm going to read it fairly briefly, or fairly quickly, but I'm going to slow down at least a couple of points that we really want to grasp and understand. John 11, verse 1, Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was the Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So the sisters sent word to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. But when Jesus heard this, he said, This sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, so when he heard that he was sick, he then stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, Let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. This he said, and after that he said to them, Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go so that I may awaken him out of sleep. The disciples then said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he was speaking of literal sleep. So Jesus then said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him. Therefore Thomas, who is called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, Let us go also, so that we may die with him. So when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. Martha, therefore, when she heard that Jesus was coming, went to meet him, but Mary stayed at the house. Martha then said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, Your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even if he dies. There's another I am statement. If you watched the video yesterday, we looked at Jesus' I am statement where he says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. We focused on I am the way. Here Jesus is making another significant statement. It's a statement of identity. It's a statement that defines who he is. He says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. I think it's 7 of these I am statements in Scripture that Jesus makes, but here we find I am the resurrection. It's part of what defines Jesus. It's part of who he is. It's part of the person of Jesus Christ. I am defined as, I am the resurrection. And here he makes this statement. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord, I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world. When she had said this, she went away and called Mary, her sister, saying secretly, The teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she got up quickly and was coming to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and consoling her, when they saw that Mary got up quickly and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw him and fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled, and he said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. So the Jews were saying, See how he loved him. But some of them said, Could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man also from dying? So Jesus, again, being deeply moved within, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, Remove the stone. Martha, the sister of the deceased, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be a stench, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they removed the stone. Then Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but because of the people standing around, I said it, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth." The man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Therefore, many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw what he had done believed in him. We'll stop there. I want to read the devotion, tomorrow's devotion to you out of this Ashes to Fire book. The author writes, "Death precedes life." That doesn't make sense, does it? Death precedes life. He says it seems absurd just to write that sentence. We know it's not true. Life itself teaches us that death is inescapable. He goes on to say, "Just yesterday I stood beside the bed of a dying man, and this morning I learned that he had died in the night. It was inevitable. I knew, he knew, and the family knew that he would die. So let's just admit it. Life precedes death, and death is inevitable." Martha knew it. She understood that Lazarus was dead, and she understood the permanence of death. This is why she requested Jesus to come visit Lazarus while he was still sick. Martha believed that Jesus could heal sickness, but death was final, right? Certainly after Lazarus had died, she didn't dare to suppose that Jesus could do anything about it. You can hear in her response that hope had died with the last breath of Lazarus. She hopelessly declared to the late arriving Jesus, "If only you had been here." Then Jesus, always looking for an opportunity to teach, responded to her hopelessness by asking Martha to examine her own beliefs. "Your brother will rise again," Jesus replied, referring to the common Jewish belief that all of God's people would rise to live in the new heavens and new earth described by Isaiah in chapters 65 and chapter 66. Martha reluctantly affirmed her belief in this future resurrection. I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day, but clearly this wasn't the hope or the comfort that Martha was looking for. We can understand Martha's frustration, right? We too often try to walk forward through life while staring back over our shoulder at certain mistakes or events that we wish had turned out differently. We grow frustrated at the constant disappointment and accompanying letdown of our faith in a God who loves us. We, like Martha, want to believe that if God loves us so much, surely he will drop what he is doing and run to where we are to fix our situation. Jesus then challenges Martha to accept another reality, and this is really what I want us to hear today. This reality comes out of Jesus' "I am" statement. It comes out of his statement of identity. "I am the resurrection and the life." You, Jesus, are the resurrection. So the resurrection is not just an event or a belief, but a person. This part of the story is so foreign to us that we, like Martha, might easily miss the meaning behind it, the author says. We unknowingly focus in on our present reality without recognizing God's future standing right in front of us in the form of a person, Jesus. We tend to focus on the amazing and almost unbelievable part of the story of a dead man being raised from his tomb, and if we aren't attentive, we might look past the resurrection to see resurrection as an event. But the teacher, Jesus, not wanting us to miss the opportunity to understand, asks us directly, do you believe? Do we believe that Jesus is the resurrection? Do we believe that Jesus brings life out of death? Do we believe that death precedes life? It is what Jesus asked of Martha. Do you believe? Do you believe that Jesus, the resurrection, is present right now, right here in front of you? Can you dare to believe that the resurrection will bring life out of death? Do you believe the future is now present? The author goes on to ask, what if we actually believed in the resurrection? What if we really understood that Jesus is the resurrection? What if Jesus was not only a historical fact, someone born in a manger, lived 2,000 plus years ago and died on a cross? What if Jesus is the future resurrection standing right in front of us today, begging us to answer the simple question, do you believe that death precedes life? It changes everything when the resurrection moves from a future event to the present reality of the indwelling presence of Jesus. Suddenly, we are made aware of resurrection all around us and in us, right here, right now. We become witnesses of dead hope rising from its resting place of convinced impossibility and changing into the certainty of present reality. We see resurrection in the lives of new believers, in the restoration of the offended, in the renewal of addicts, In the faces of the hopeless, we testify that faith is the lens through which we can see the future. What if Jesus' self-imposed nickname stuck? Jesus, also known as the resurrection. Would our understanding of the mission of God become clearer if we switched the saying from "what would Jesus do" to "what would resurrection do"? Or how about instead of saying "I want to be like Jesus," we said "I want to be like the resurrection"? What if we lived in this resurrection attitude? What would happen if we lived out the resurrection? It would change everything. It would eliminate the sting of death, sorrow, and suffering. We would embrace life differently, seeing hopelessness as hope in the making. Did you hear that? Seeing hopelessness as hope in the making. Mourning as joy, sickness as healing, disappointment as fulfillment, and death as life. Resurrection living leads us directly into Christ-likeness. This kind of faith is a vital sign of hope and confidence in a God who loves. We hear Jesus ask us, as he did Martha, "Do you believe?" If we live in this resurrection power, we discover that our future hope already exists in the here and now, and that our present relationship with God through Christ is future reality. Our declared impossibilities must be questioned, our doubts must die and rise into faith. If only Jesus would have, must awaken and rise into, Jesus already has. Resurrection life is invincible. Resurrection power can't die. Resurrection hope lives in me. Resurrection faith changes everything. Do you believe? We talked yesterday in our video about understanding the statement, the I am statement that Jesus made, that I am the way. We talked about how that's a defining statement of who Jesus is, that he isn't just a roadmap, he isn't just a road upon which we travel, he's not just pointing us in the direction of the way, but he is in fact the way. Well, the same is true with this statement today, I am the resurrection. It's a defining statement. Jesus says, I am the resurrection, and unless you know me, you can't know resurrection. I wonder what it would look like if we got to know the person Jesus Christ. I wonder what death might be transformed into life through the power of God if we understood Jesus as the resurrection. Rather than understanding resurrection as a future event, what if we understood the resurrection as the person of Jesus Christ, indwelling us, living, present with us? What if we understood that Jesus wants to bring life to death? What circumstances in your life currently look more like death and hopelessness and despair than life? And how might Jesus, if he really is the resurrection, not just pointing to some future event, but if he truly is the person of Jesus, if he truly is the resurrection, what circumstances in your life, what pain, what suffering, what difficulty, what hopelessness, what despair, what addiction, what things in your life might he be able to transform into life? What areas in your life look more like death that he can transform into the peace and the joy and the hope that comes from walking in relationship with him, with Jesus, with the resurrection? In what way might your life begin to look different? In what way might the life of your neighbors and the life of your family begin to look different if we were just to engage the person, Jesus Christ, as the resurrection, as the one who can bring life? That statement at the beginning of the author's devotion, "Death precedes life," it threw me for a loop. It's a different way of thinking. It doesn't make sense to us. Life precedes death. We live this life and then we die. Jesus said, I came to give life. Abundant life. What if Jesus wants to transform the circumstances of your life? Do you believe? Do you believe that he's the resurrection? I believe.